There are lots of potential reasons why you're seemingly not getting stronger. Some of them may be beyond your control right now, so don't beat yourself up. At the same time, you might not fully understand why yourself, so I hope this video can help you clarify things, let go of some pressure, maybe even feel validated in reasons you haven't been able to name yet. They're not always excuses. Let's get into it. In no particular order, reason number one, you haven't found a safe space to train yet. Only 31% of US adults are meeting the strength portion of the physical activity guidelines, and I think at least part of it has to do with access to safe spaces to do this type of exercise that has more nuance than cardio exercise and more tool requirements that you probably need a proper gym space for. I'll be honest, when people that we coach get to a point where they are interested in becoming independent, there aren't a whole lot of access-based gyms we enthusiastically recommend for strength training nearby. And we are in a pretty big metropolitan area. In 2024, there's still just a lot of toxic masculinity and competitive culture in the worst ways out there in traditional global gyms, which people are right to cringe at. That's not to say it's all bad, but if you're in a marginalized group and your spidey sense goes off, it's probably correct. Unsolicited advice that is often misinformed too, comments on your body, constant subliminal messaging with the poor choices of decor, things on the wall like no pain, no gain, or a particular snake flag, obnoxious music. You don't need any of that. Meanwhile, the smaller mom and pop gyms that may not always have these issues often also don't have the flexibility and hours people need or enough of the right equipment available. I don't have any perfect answers, but what I can say is it's worth checking out your options thoroughly and don't settle for anything where your basic needs and core values aren't being met. But if it's not a basic need, maybe you can negotiate it, like working out before work instead of after to meet their schedule, paying a little bit more than the cheapest option, wearing headphones to tune out the background noise and get in your zone, or traveling a little bit further, all worth considering. Or the big workaround, finding a way to build your own home gym in a way that fits your current budget so you can truly have a safe space that's open whenever you want. Bench press in pajamas, anyone? This is something we help our clients design when they're ready. All that being said, keep checking in with yourself on whether it truly is a lack of options versus you waiting for a unicorn to appear when the imperfect real-world options might be sufficient and worth some compromise so you can get started now. Remember, if you have a legit health condition, waiting has a cost. A modest set of dumbbell pairs with weights from like 5 to 35 pounds in a safe and clean enough space is enough for most people to start making progress on their strength. Reason number two, you haven't found a safe way to train consistently yet. You may think of yourself as unathletic, which whether or not that's true, it sets a frame where you're an outsider and those strong people doing strong things over there are different from you. You might even be trying to DIY it or do it yourself rather than learn from someone else to save money maybe, or because exercise seems like it's pretty simple, right? Like something you should be able to figure out on your own. At the same time, you don't have a lot of experience doing or appropriately loading the exercises in a way that works for your body, or when you have tried in the past and then had a bodily experience like soreness or pain, you feel those kinds of discomfort and worry that you're doing something wrong. Since you don't know the difference between a normal response to training versus causing yourself harm, you tend to stop doing the exercises and can't progress. The other YouTube videos you look up on this subject aren't clear or offer a lot of contradictory information, which can send you spinning down rabbit holes to nowhere or kindly part you with some of your money for something that doesn't help you resolve your feelings and questions about your bodily experience when you do exercise. If you have friends or gym buddies with muscles, they may offer their personal anecdotes, which at times may have some utility and other times don't seem to jive with your body's experience. The gaps in your knowledge and feelings of unease remain. You're not dumb. You're just missing key information that makes the results you want accessible. As children, we all start out uninformed, and whatever expertise we eventually develop as adults is narrow. Getting an education will be essential for you to become informed enough to understand how to do the essential strength exercises and how to manage your body's response to doing them in a trauma-informed way. How much does an education cost? And how much is it worth to you? If you've gone to college and paid for it, you already know what's up. Don't worry, this isn't a sales pitch. I don't have an online course or anything like that to sell you. Maybe someday I'll get to work on that. But how complex is exercise? Do you really need a 4-year degree to take care of your body? Let me say, as a former engineer, this isn't all that complicated, but because it involves your unique body and behavior, and because we're just swimming in misinformation in the culture at large, it is more complex than making mac and cheese or imitating a Peloton trainer's lifting technique. Our culture tends to devalue the nuance of what smart training takes. It's always trying to market things as super simple because they know the largest audiences are hooked on that feeling of instant gratification and have limited attention spans. Hello! The answers I have for you are, start asking better questions. Instead of asking, why do deadlifts hurt my back? Try out, how do I perform or load an exercise to build a positive relationship with it? That's just an example. I don't fully like that answer either, because if you search for it on Google or YouTube, what do you get? Probably a whole bunch of incomplete or straight up misinformation. So something perhaps more helpful is a lesson I learned from business. You don't have a what problem, you might have a who problem, which means that you may just want to find a teacher on the subject whom you find trustworthy, whom can answer your questions, and may be available to talk with you at length about them. How do you identify a trustworthy teacher? Look for coaches and educators who have at least an awareness of emotions, if not trauma itself, and how these intersect with people's exercise experiences in real ways. 2, can cite research to back up their claims and speak coherently about it, or at least acknowledge when something is based on an anecdote or their personal experience only. Wow, coach, I'd love to know more about that study. Can you please send me the PubMed link? 3, they don't have an opinion on literally everything. They're able to say, I don't know, or that's outside of my scope, at least some of the time, indicating they have some self-awareness and humility around the limits of their knowledge. Finally, that je ne sais quoi, they just make you feel at ease. Trust your intuition and emotional intelligence. Ultimately, I think people want to be taught by people that are easy to talk to as human beings, not some robot coach that only gives them instructions or is just highly guarded. Just like that spidey sense when walking into a gym space, trust it in the same way when you're meeting with a prospective coach or teacher for the first time. Reason number 3, you're not tracking things that matter or tracking at all. There is a certain truth to the saying, what gets tracked gets trained. If you don't have an awareness of a thing, how can you hope to develop it in a meaningful way? So let's assume you're open to tracking something with numbers to get stronger. What should you track even? Traditionally, people tend to track weight on the bar, like a 100-pound deadlift, or how many reps of a bodyweight exercise, like push-ups, for example. Traditionally, if you lift more weight, you've gotten stronger. Do more push-ups, you've gotten stronger. This is a somewhat imprecise definition of strength, but let's roll with it for now, since it's kind of common language. When I was about 14 years old in 1997, I read a lot of my dad's men's fitness magazines. At some point, it said that push-ups were very important. So that's what I did every weekday morning for a few months in high school. 2 sets, as many reps as I could do. That's what it was. I was eventually able to do more push-ups, 50 or so I think at the time, and felt like I had a puffy chest when I walked down the halls at school. But it didn't last because I had no greater direction in this magazine's narrow context. It honestly got too tiring to try to do more, so I lost motivation, and my otherwise feelings of pride I had at school easily dissolved once the novelty wore off. There had to be a better way, but honestly I didn't really find it until over a decade later and didn't fully understand it until years after that even. So again, the traditional or old school way to get stronger is to attempt to lift more weights or attempt to do more reps. Duh, this sounds nice and simple, but it isn't very instructive. How often should I attempt to lift more weight? How will I know my body is ready to do so safely? These are better questions. The best available evidence suggests that the important metrics to track for any given strength exercise are internal loading, aka RPE, and volume over the course of 1 week or longer time periods, which together are called the training dose. RPE, which stands for rate of perceived exertion, is a scale from 1 to 10 that is used to sense and describe how hard you are working within your own body. It turns out your strength varies day to day, and thus the amount of force you can produce for a given exercise will also vary, which is why RPE is a better way to gauge how much external load is appropriate for today. It should change to meet you where you are. If you've ever tried to lift weights and get strong for a while, but got to a point of frustration because it became really hard to do what the plan said to do, or you just had an off day and couldn't do it at all and lost motivation to continue, this is a big deal. So again, in a very basic sense, RPE plus volume equals the training dose for a given exercise like squats. For most beginners, a weekly dose of 3 to 5 sets with RPEs between 5 to 8 is enough to have regular gains for a while. Over a period of time, usually 3 weeks of strength training twice a week, for example, you will find that similar external loadings become easier to do the same number of reps with, such that you will need to increase the load or reps to produce the same feeling of difficulty or RPE. Congratulations, you just got stronger. This is called progressive or adaptive loading. Instead of trying to lift more weights to build strength, you keep lifting a similar combination of weights and reps that produces the same RPE. When that starts to feel easier, you adjust the combination to produce that same RPE again, or just increase the number of sets. This was what I was missing in my teenage years, even with my very narrow and unserious goal around push-ups, a way to track and then modify the training dose that made the same amount of exercise easier over time. This would have opened up the possibility of me doing more for the same amount of effort rather than trying to force it, getting frustrated, and losing motivation. This is what we teach our clients today, and besides being what the available evidence supports, honors the whole person and allows them to exercise in a way where their day-to-day abilities and feelings are centered in the process. And just to zoom out, to open up a greater perspective on tracking things that matter, there is time. There is the invested time it takes to learn and engage with this kind of holistic process and let strength happen organically and in a healthful way, versus the months or even years you may have spent trying, wasting your time, energy, and money, and coming up short and maybe feeling bad about it. If this is you, it might be time to explore a new way forward that at first may feel slow, but like the tortoise that does eventually beat the hare, in the long run you're better off and may prefer feeling a certain RPE ease while you get there. Reason number 4, you're not lifting heavy enough or often enough. You might not be lifting heavy or often enough for lots of reasons, but if lack of heaviness is the thing, it's probably because you're scared of lifting heavier due to one or more of the following. First, your own lack of understanding of how to interpret the feelings in your body when you sense your muscular effort is at a certain threshold. 2, stories you've been told by your parents or parent-like figures in your life about the dangers of certain exercises. 3, you might be currently among people who keep telling you you're going to get injured, so don't even try. In summary, a culture of fear. Research shows that if you're not lifting with at least 70% of your estimated maximum, or using RPEs 5 to 8 regularly, you're probably missing out on the gains. You may be scared of using heavier weights, or just have no idea what 70% or RPE 5 is, but it's going to take some intentional self-exploration to work through your fears and get to a point where you are meeting these minimums. Studies show that lifting weights is safe and has one of the lowest injury rates among sports. There is nothing inherently unsafe about it. It is just something to gradually work through your fear of while monitoring your training dose. It may be worth familiarizing yourself with the supporting research that shows how safe lifting weights really is. I've included some references in the caption. Remember, doing nothing also carries a long-term health risk, as the activity guideline studies show that both strength training and cardio exercise improve all-cause mortality risk as you get older. I think a lot of the hesitation people have about injury risk in strength training has a lot more to do with the social worry about looking and feeling foolish and not actually injury risk per se, which again is resolved by learning to exercise in a way that focuses on listening to your body and processing those feelings as they come up. The other thing you might not be doing is lifting often enough, which translates to achieving a sufficient training dose, particularly weekly volume. If you're only squatting once per week for 3 sets, there's a limit on how far that can take you, and it will be important to explore increasing your volume by doing more sets in a single session or engaging with a given exercise more than once per week. At the end of the day, there are no shortcuts to getting strong, and you will need to bring your worker bee stance to some parts of your practice for it to keep working for you. For both of the not heavy enough and not often enough concerns, you will want to spend some time exploring strength culture. Meet some strong people who embody it in a helpful way. Not necessarily the strongest people there are, just the real ones who have a positive relationship with strength training and how they describe their experience of it, how much time and energy they give it, how they describe their sensory experience and overcoming adversity, how they navigate the toxic masculinity culture at large, and the whole range of personal preferences around function, fashion, self-image, beauty, etc. In the last 5 to 10 years, at least, there has been an explosion on social media of, for example, grandmas regularly lifting over 200 pounds in the squat or deadlift, queer and non-binary people positively taking up space and showing that strength training is not inherently masculine and that truly all bodies are capable of developing and expressing their strength. Finally, just take your time exploring lifting heavier. Notice the sensations that come up in your body during a set, right after, maybe even the next morning or 2 after. You might even like journaling about it, talking to a friend about it. Go watch some lifting events online or in person. Look at how real and vulnerable and uninjured the people are, and start to explore a new culture that can build a bridge between fear and safety for you. Reason number 5, you're not eating or sleeping enough to recover properly, and you may kind of wear it like a badge of honor. You probably already know this, but we can all use a reminder about the basics of sleep and proper nutrition. The gains don't happen in a vacuum. If you're regularly getting less than 6 hours of sleep per night, need that afternoon coffee to function, or eating less than the protein guidelines of 0.7 to 1.0 grams per pound of body weight per day, it might not matter how smart your training plan is. Sleep and adequate nourishment are foundational. Alcohol and stress impair your recovery abilities as well. You simply don't have the same body in your 40s, 50s, and beyond than you did in your 20s when it comes to coping with deficits in these areas. That being said, we sometimes do help new moms, for example, do the best they can with appropriately dosed exercise and in perfect sleep conditions, being careful to talk thoroughly with them about the trade-offs and sensitivity of their process. Part of the toxic masculine culture that I think is particularly important to divest from in this area is stoicism and how we care for our bodies. Endurance of pain or hardship without the display of feelings and without complaint keeps people disconnected socially. How are you? I'm fine. And disconnected from themselves emotionally and physically, unable to sense when their bodies need more care or when they're just emotionally overwhelmed and need a break from external stressors. You are worthy of a health future that doesn't depend on sacrificing yourself in the present moment. Reason number 6 is just reason number 2. You don't know enough. Plus, you may need more care. You may need more care than an online group class or 20-year-old personal trainer can deliver. Are you trying to order foie gras at the drive-thru window? Ma'am or sir or person, this is a Wendy's. If you have a diagnosed health condition and you're trying in earnest to start strength training to fight the tide in a group class setting because it's the affordable option, or even with the help of a personal trainer, depending on the condition and trainer, it may be outside of their scope of practice to guide you. Personal trainers, they have my heart. They're like the frontline workers in the fitness space, easy to access, sometimes easy on the eyes, also easily out of their depth as they meet clients in older bodies, often with complex health and medical histories. Having been a gym owner and trying to make the numbers work, I know trainers usually don't get a lot of choices and which clients get assigned to them. It's often just based on availability. So they do their best, but it's not always in the best interests of you, the client. What are the important areas of your life that you trust 20-something-year-olds to guide you through? Of course, it's best to have both knowledge and relatable life experience, but I would tend to trust a trainer that is closer to my age and maybe has less work experience than a trainer much younger who has many years of experience even. There's something about lived experience that stands apart. My perspective on life and health is a lot different now than 20 years ago. Anyhow, you may be continually disappointed if you hope to learn how to navigate your body's response to strength exercises by a young person who simply hasn't spent a lot of time learning their craft or having been through some decades of adult life. You'd be better off taking a moment and zooming out on your situation. What qualities are most important to me in a coach? What is my budget for what I'm setting out to do? And what is the cost of not doing anything? How do my available local options align with these qualities I value? If the alignment is not great, might I consider working remotely with a coach? These are the types of questions to ask yourself when it's really important that you get it right. Reason number 7, you have trauma or are just super stressed out. This can show up in various bodily ways where you're either disconnected from your body, unable to sense and honor its limits, so push too hard or not at all, or have emotional stress that sometimes shows up in your body as pain, which brings up fear and makes certain exercises more difficult at times, and the overall training experience just unenjoyable. Without diving too deep into the many potential facets of this, you may benefit from trauma-informed ways of engaging with strength training because the prevailing gym and fitness cultures can at best offer an "I'm so sorry" or blank stares, and at worst make things worse. Even a good trauma-informed coach has an awareness of their scope of practice and should work with you to identify when it's time to seek different or just more integrated levels of care rather than trying to push through and assume that things will just work themselves out. In summary, there's probably no one reason why you're not getting stronger, but a combination perhaps. You may in fact be on your path to getting stronger right now. It just takes time, including the contemplative time where you're thinking about doing something new. Did any of the reasons mentioned resonate with you? Try to be patient with yourself, while at the same time seeking better information and support that honors the truth of your body and lived experience.